tunnel leading to the kingdom of Hornest. As the three heroes went deeper and deeper into the tunnel, the trail left behind by the crow cutter's sword was getting thinner and thinner, until it completely disappeared. "What? Why is it gone, Nanthan?" Antonio asked. "Antonio, we're most likely too late." Nanthan breathed in deeply after he said that. "What?" Antonio was confused. "Why do you think that?" "The trail is gone because Dan lifted the sword. He's most likely made it to wherever he was headed. We can only now hope that he's alright," Nanthan explained to the young Ant Antonio, who slowly lowered his head. "So what do we do now?" he asked. Nanthan just raised his head suddenly. The truth is, he didn't know what they should do next. He had hoped that they would make it in time, but... "There!" Hercules suddenly said, pointing at something in the distance. It was a hole that led outside the tree. The trio walked to the hole and looked outside. Not too far away from the hole, the entrance to Hornest could be seen, unguarded. This was because all of the nearby guards carried their wounded lord inside earlier, so the entrance was left with no guards. Of course, the three heroes did not know this. All they knew was that the entrance was clear and that they would not get an opportunity like this again. But there was one problem. There's the entrance, but how do we enter Hornest from here? Nanthan wondered. "And I thought you was smart, Nant," Hercules smiled. Nanthan looked at him. He then realized what his friend meant. This made Nanthan smile as he told Hercules, "Of course, the mighty Hercules always has the answer." "Jump on, will ya?" Hercules spread his beat-up wings and Nanthan climbed on his back. "Come on, kid, you too," Hercules told Antonio. The young ant smiled and climbed the Hercules beetle. He was very excited that he would fly for the first time. "You ready?" Hercules asked them. "Antonio?" Nanthan said. Yes, I think I am, but aren't your wings wounded from back when you fought Nanthan, Mr. Hercules?" Antonio was a bit worried. "You're right, kid. And while I can no longer fly like I used to, I can get us to the entrance over there with no issues. The distance is pretty small," Hercules explained. "So then quit yapping and do it already," Nanthan jokingly said. This made Hercules smile. The big beetle's wings started buzzing, and the beetle started flying. Hercules rapidly flew towards the entrance, and the trio finally made it inside the giant nest. The two ants jumped down from Hercules' back. "How did you like the flight, Antonio?" Hercules asked. "It was great. A bit short, but it felt amazing. Flying is awesome." Antonio was very happy. His honest, childlike reaction made Nanthan and Hercules feel warm and joyful. Feelings that wouldn't last very long. "How about ya, Nant?" It was alright, I guess," Nanthan sarcastically said. This made Hercules chuckle. The trio walked inside the big nest. They were amazed by the looks of the Hornest city. Hundreds of cellular, hexagon-shaped houses, all perfectly arranged one on top of another on all sides of the nest. "They seem pretty well organized for a bunch of worthless bastards," Hercules said. The trio then checked out the giant tower that stood in the very center of the city. The Hexagon Tower. A giant hexagon-shaped structure that had 5 floors, each with its own entrances and exits. The building was perfectly straight, so a non-flying bug would have a hard time getting to the top of the tower from the outside. "I guess we're headed there," Nanthan said, and Hercules and Antonio followed him. The three entered the tower. The first floor was a weapon storage room. Other than the weapons, there was not a single living soul there. The three were just about to move on to the next floor when suddenly Nanthan noticed something. The weapons. They're all Ozara's feather weapons. When he pointed it out, Antonio and Hercules noticed it too. There was a dozen of swords and spears, a trident, and even the scissors Dan mentioned. "They are collecting the feather weapons," Hercules said. "They are preparing for something," Nanthan said. "Something big. And there is only one thing that would have them prepare this many feather weapons." "You mean they are preparing to fight Ozara?" Antonio asked. "I don't know, but if I had to guess, considering the amount of weapons there is, and the fact that it's been about 12 seasons since the last time Ozara attacked, I would say yes. I assume there's some kind of an army somewhere in this tower, so we have to be very cautious," Nanthan concluded. "Either way, we need to get moving." The three climbed up the tower, onto the second floor. There were two ways to go next. A small door that led to a room, and a long hallway that led to the other side of the floor. The trio stopped to think about what to do next. "The room or the hallway? Which way do we go?" Antonio said, and Nanthan quickly put his top right leg onto the young ant's mouth. "Antonio, quiet!" Nanthan angrily whispered, pointing towards the small door. The room was right next to them, the room in which they had no idea who or what resided. Antonio realized the mistake that he had made. Fortunately, nothing seemed to have happened. Nanthan thought for a few moments. Hercules was standing right next to him. What to do next? Where to go next? The two were asking themselves. They were standing very close to the small door. The two experienced warriors felt a sudden chill, a sudden disturbance in the air emitting from the small door. Nanthan slowly got closer to the door. He carefully leaned onto it. He then felt something else. Danger, a daunting, deadly hazard, waiting for them behind that door. He turned towards Hercules. His friend had felt the same ominous presence. Antonio did not seem to feel anything. It made sense. Only those who were exceptional warriors could feel something like this in the air. Hercules and Nanthan were looking in each other's eyes. Both of them knew. They knew what was behind that door. And they also knew what will happen if this was left neglected. "What's going on?" Antonio quietly asked when he noticed the unsettling looks on Nanthan's and Hercules' faces. Nanthan looked at Hercules again. Hercules nodded. He understood what had to be done. As much as he didn't want to, he knew that he had to play along. He had to keep his promise. He had to keep Antonio safe. "Antonio, we have to split up," Nanthan calmly said. "What? Why?" Antonio didn't understand. He didn't want them to split up. Hercules touched Antonio's shoulder, saying, "This room, it has to be checked. But the hallway also has to be checked. And we're short of time. So Nanthan will go inside this room to check it out for us, while you and I go to check what's on the end of this hallway." "Oh, I understand," Antonio said, even though he knew there was something the two of them weren't telling him. "Yeah, Hercules is right. I'll meet you later. Wait for me at the end of the hallway." Nanthan did his best to say those words in a calm and convincing tone. "Okay," Antonio nodded. He did not notice Nanthan's nervousness. Antonio and Hercules turned around, and just before they started walking down the long hall, Hercules said, "Nanthan, I'm keeping my promises. You better keep yours too." Antonio and Hercules started going their way. When they were out of Nanthan's sight, the brave ant pulled out his blade. He held the blade straight in front of him, then he raised it upwards. He then took a deep breath and whispered, "O Queen Atlantia, give me the strength I need to do this." Nanthan then opened the door, entered the smaller room, and quickly shut the door closed behind him. The second floor of the hexagon tower consisted of two rooms, one at the very beginning of the floor and the other one at the very end of the long hallway. The room at the end of the hallway was the room where Caesar, Ten and Vosporio were currently at, while the other room, the room that Nanthan had just entered, was the room where the 11 assassins resided. The room was dark when Nanthan shut the door. Nanthan's eyes needed a few seconds to adjust. Unlike his sharp senses that were already prepared for anything he would have to face, Nanthan felt a couple dozen eyes look at him from all sides. His eyes finally adjusted. He was surrounded by 11 deadly assassin wasps, each one standing on the walls of the room. After seeing that the wasps did not attack, Nanthan lowered his blade, saying, "Which one of you is Nihil?" The 11 assassins seemed intrigued by the mention of that name.
"Hey, Decimus, isn't that one of those ants?"
Septimus asked his brother.
"Yes, he's carrying the blade,"
Decimus confirmed, tilting his head onto the right.
"And he's looking for father. Interesting,"
Tetrius commented. One of the wasps suddenly jumped from the wall, landing in front of Nanthan. The wasp smiled and said, "I am Nihil. And you are?" "So you're that Nihil guy I heard so much about." "I am Nanthan. I would say nice to meet you and all that, but the truth is..." Nanthan quickly pointed his blade at Nihil, grabbed Nihil's middle legs, and pulled the wasp towards him. Nihil had no time to react, and his stomach was pierced through by the sharp feather blade.
"This is for Diablo,"
Nanthan whispered before pulling his blade out of the dying wasp's body. Nihil fell to the ground, blood coming from his mouth and the hole in his stomach. The 10 other assassins could not believe what they had just witnessed. It took a few seconds for them to take in what had just happened.
"Father?"
Quatrus said.
"He killed him! He killed father!"
Sextus exclaimed.
"Diablo! He mentioned Diablo!"
Nonus noticed.
"Kill him! Kill him!"
Primus ordered, and thus the fight began. Tetrius, Decimus and Septimus were the quickest. They attacked Nanthan from 3 sides, but their speed was nothing compared to Nanthan's. Nanthan parried the 3 wasps with ease, deflecting all of their stings one by one with his blade. First he swung to the left, blocking Tetrius's attack, then he swung to the right, blocking Septimus's attack, and finally he deflected Decimus's sting that was in front of him by swinging his blade upwards.
"Die!"
Secundus screamed as he aimed at Nanthan from above. Thanks to Secundus's yelling, Nanthan didn't have to look up to know that a rapid attack was coming. He took a single step backwards. This was more than enough to make the enraged Secundus miss his attack. The wasp hit the floor with his sting. Then, in one swift motion, Nanthan cut Secundus's head right off. And as the wasp's head hit the ground, Nanthan said with a serious look on his face, "1 down, 9 to go." The death of one of their brothers enraged the rest of the wasps even more. Now, even those who hesitated when their father fell joined the battle. This time, 5 of the wasp brothers attacked at the same time. Sextus from the left, Nonus from the right, Quartus from the front, Primus from behind, and Octavus from above. 5 deadly stings, all pointing at Nanthan. Even with all of that, Nanthan did something nobody would expect. He closed his eyes and lowered his blade. He was concentrating, feeling the air around him. Just as he was about to get stabbed from all 5 sides, he finally moved. His speed was beyond that of any ant, no, any bug that the assassins have ever faced. First, Nanthan raised his sword upwards, reaching the sting of the wasp above him, Octavus. The small collision of Nanthan's blade and Octavus's sting was enough to disrupt the trajectory of Octavus's attack. Thus, Octavus missed Nanthan by a few millimeters. Immediately after that, Nanthan quickly pointed his blade as far up front as he could reach before spinning around, touching each and every single one of the other wasp's stings. setting them all off balance and disrupting their attacks. The four wasps collided with Nanthan from all sides, but not a single one of their stings managed to even put a scratch on the end. The four wasps fell to the ground, disoriented from the hit, but Nanthan stood still. He didn't even seem to feel the impact, let alone get disoriented by it. But right as the four wasps fell to the ground, the rest of the wasps made a second wave of attacks. Tetros, Quintus, Septimus, and Decimus attacked from all four sides. Nanthan was ready to parry their attacks, the same way he parried the previous wave, but he suddenly realized that he couldn't move. He looked down. The four wasps that fell to the ground earlier all now held his legs. Nanthan couldn't move at all. Damn it! Nanthan had no time to come up with a new strategy to deflect the upcoming attacks. He raised his blade. From this position, he could see and thus easily deflect the attacks that were coming from his left and right side, as well as the upcoming attack from the front. But what about the attack from the back? Nanthan thought. But there was no time to think. Nanthan swung his blade left and right, blocking the attacks from his left, his right, and his front sides. But then... Ah! He let out, as Quintus managed to sting him from behind. I got him! Quintus cheered as his sting went straight through the Castanean armor Nanthan was wearing, piercing through the ant's back. Nanthan could feel the deadly venom that the wasp was injecting. No, not yet, Nanthan yelled, spinning his blade around. With a few quick motions, Nanthan stabbed the four wasps that were holding his legs in their backs. No! Quintus pulled his sting out and flew backwards when he saw what Nanthan did. Instead of giving up, he managed to not only withstand Quintus's attack, but also managed to kill four of Quintus's brothers. Sextus, Nonus, Primus, and Quartus all joined Nihil and Secundus in the realm of the dead. 5 down, 5 to go, Nanthan coldly said as he still stood straight. It's as if he wasn't even affected by the venom that was now deep inside his body. It's as if he didn't even feel any pain from the hole he had on his back. How? Quintus fell on his back, slowly crawling backwards, shaking in fear. How are you still standing? I stung you. You should be laying dead by now. Nanthan ignored the scared wasp's cries, and he just walked closer and closer towards Quintus. But before he could finish Quintus off, Octavus suddenly jumped at Nanthan from the left. Instead of attacking with his sting immediately, Octavus decided to first pin Nanthan to the ground. To do this, he used all the strength that he had to push Nanthan, but it did not work. While Nanthan did move a few steps to the right, he did not fall to the ground, let alone get pinned to it. When Octavus realized he could not overpower Nanthan, he went on to try and stab the ant, but it was already too late. Nanthan was quicker. With a single swing, Nanthan cut Octavus's head off. 6 down, 4 to go, Nanthan said to himself. There were only 4 assassins left, but considering that Quintus was still leaning on the wall, trembling in fear, unable to fight, there were technically only 3 opponents left. Those were Tetrius, Septimus, and Decimus. Nanthan turned to the left, then to the right. He realized that 3 wasps weren't around him. But then, that could only mean one thing. They were above him. Before Nanthan could look upwards, the 3 wasps landed on top of him. They saw how Octavus on his own couldn't take down Nanthan, so they decided to jump at him from the ceiling, all 3 at once. This was too much for Nanthan, and the ant fell to the ground, letting go of his blade. Now, through his armor! Tetrius yelled, and the 3 wasps stung Nanthan in the stomach from 3 different angles. 2 in the front and 1 in the left side of Nanthan's stomach. All 3 of them injected all of their venom inside Nanthan at the same time. Nanthan struggled for a bit before becoming calm. Finally! Tetrius relaxed a little. Seeing this, Septimus and Decimus relaxed too. What a beast! Decimus commented.
Yes,
Septimus agreed.
he was an exceptional warrior.
Is, Nanthan whispered. The three wasps looked down with disbelief at the ant, who was somehow still alive. What you meant to say is... He is an exceptional warrior. Nanthan corrected Septimus before proceeding to push all three wasps off of him. Septimus and Decimus fell to the left and right of Nanthan, while Tetrius stumbled a bit before falling onto the wall behind him, next to the horrified Quintus. Nanthan took his time to look for the blade that he had dropped earlier. He found it and struggled for a bit to pick it up from the ground. He picked it up, but it fell from his leg. He picked it up again, and this time he could hold it. His legs were trembling a bit, but it was okay. Once again, Nanthan seemed to be unaffected by the venom that was flowing inside of him, even though his body showed the opposite. He was pale, he was bleeding heavily from all of his wounds, and the blood that was dripping from them was pitch black. An undeniable proof that the assassin's venom was working. He even started bleeding from his mouth, and the blood was once again pitch black. But with pure strength of his will, the will to push onwards with his battle, the will to kill these assassins, the will to save his friends. It was his iron will that pushed him forward beyond what any other bug before or after him was capable of doing. Even the heavy Diablo, the most enduring bug in all of Castania, had fallen victim to the deadly venom of the assassin wasps. But while Diablo may have been the most enduring bug, there was one bug that was sturdier than him. One bug that could withstand not one, not two, not three, but 4 stings from the assassin wasps. That bug's name was Nanthan. Nanthan the Sturdy. Once they saw the scene of him getting up after being ejected by so much venom, the remaining assassins lost the will to fight. They lost their courage.
Who is that ant? Why is he still standing? How do we survive?
That was all that the remaining assassins could think of. And Nanthan walked up to them, one at a time. He pierced through Decimus's neck. He cut Septimus's head off. 8 down. He then walked up to the 2 wasps leaning on the wall. The final 2 assassins. Both of these wasps stung him in this battle. Quintus stung him in the back, while Tetrus stung him in his stomach. Nanthan spent a few seconds just observing the last 2 helpless wasps. He would almost feel some sympathy for them, if not for the fact that these very same wasps were going to attack him and his friends at the very first chance they got. Thinking about what could have happened to Hercules and Antonio had he not decided to enter this room, had he not decided to get rid of these assassins, it was enough to make Nanthan finish the job. 2 to go, he said. Nanthan decided to stab Tetrius through his stomach first. He would leave the trembling Quintus last. Quintus started crying as he saw his last brother die at the hands of the ant. Nanthan pulled out his sword and looked at Quintus.
Please, spare me,
the wasp begged for mercy. You cowardly stung me from behind. You, your brothers and your father have killed countless innocent bugs. Yet, you expect me to show mercy to someone like you. You who would use the first chance he gets to murder me and my friends. I'm sorry, but I do not show mercy to pests like you, Nanthan coldly said, then proceeded to rip Quintus's stomach open with one upward slashing motion. The last of the assassins died. Nanthan the Sturdy won. A single ant, killing 11 of the deadliest assassins in Castania, all done to protect his friends. Nanthan slowly turned around and started walking towards the small door from which he had came from. But as soon as he took the first few steps, the ant fell on his knees, leaning onto his sword. Green blood was dripping from his sword, the blood of the 11 wasps he had bested. Black blood was dripping from every wound on his body, his mouth, even from his eyes.
So, this is how I meet my end, he quietly said to himself. His body became heavier and heavier as the time passed, and he could barely hold the position he was in. He started shaking, as the venom effects finally started catching up to him. I see. Tears started flowing down Nanthan's eyes, down his tired and sad face. But he wasn't crying due to the pain or regret, no. He was crying because he couldn't keep a promise he made. I'm sorry, Hercules. Looks like we won't be getting that drink together. The brave ant let out his final words before his body finally failed him, and he fell onto the ground. The ant closed his eyes before falling into eternal slumber. And so, Nanthan, the sturdy ant, died.